Principal things that we do are band management, band booking,
Publicity for independent music, film, and bands, and talent buying, which is booking music venues. Those are sort of the large things. They overlap in spots, meaning if there's an artist we work with, we might do their publicity, their management, their booking, but the overall goal is if it's a band that we manage, we'll wear all the hats until we develop them to a point where they have a major booking agency, they have a major national print publicist, all the things that go along with it, and we just manage the band and oversee all the people that do all those different things.
So it's basically development for artists.
Correct.
How do you pick an artist?
A band that you feel like spending that kind of energy in, because obviously if you're developing them, they're not making a whole lot of money. I mean, not that that's a bad thing, but it's obviously the beginning stages, and you have to think that it's going to develop into something. Otherwise, it's a lot of time spent for a little return.
So you go out and hear music a lot?
Yeah, absolutely.
Who's the last band you signed?
Macrosick. Yeah, there's I mean, not to plug them too hard, but yeah, a band named Macrosick. They've actually only done, a handful of shows, locally. They used to be in a band called Earthsuit that had a major label, well, not major, but a minor label deal. And they reformed, and it's kind of a cool Talking Head-ish band. It blew us away first time we saw it, actually, at the Howlin' Wolf. And, we weren't even really in a position to, looking to pick up new bands, and it was just undeniable. It was just one of those kind of things. So.
How many bands you working with?
Management, this is 4, and then I guess publicity-wise, there's probably 8 to 10 at different times. And then we do publicity for all the bands that we manage and the venues that we buy talent for, like Twiropa and then the Colorado venues as well.
I know a lot of the students in the program are working for you as interns, correct?
There's a few.
Yeah? How many?
8?
8?
Yeah.
Or so.
We've had quite a few, come in and out, and, they've been great. I mean, I don't know, I went to school here, and I wish this would have been a major, offered for me for sure, but they've been great, yeah. There's a couple of them still sitting here, I believe.
What did you major in?
English. I was English writing major and marketing, and so I spent quite a bit of time in this school, but I was originally going to go to law school, and we were just talking about that. I took the LSAT in this room, which was pretty creepy, and I decided I didn't want to do that with my life, so I moved to Colorado and started booking a music venue there and migrated my way back down here and just kind of stuck with it. So
how'd you guys hook up?
Such a sweet story. Would you like to hear it?
I was in New Orleans at the time, and a mutual acquaintance of ours that worked in music, Casey was in Colorado at that time. He left after college. We didn't know each other at the time, and he said that there was a guy moving back to New Orleans that I should contact when he gets in town. He's around my age. And it turned out that we'd gone to the same high school, except he's 3 years behind me, so we never met one another, et cetera. And we were similar feeder schools as kids, just had a lot in common. And within a year of him moving back, we just decided to... Originally, we started Infectious as just a way to generate revenues for our separate companies, just doing specifically tour press for bands, because we'd both been doing that, him from the venue side with the clubs he booked in Colorado, and me for bands, just putting them on the road and booking tours and getting their tour press. So we thought, well, we'll just make some money doing this, and it'll keep our separate companies afloat. And within a couple months, we'd basically put the two companies together, and that's kind of how we arrived at that.
So when you sign a band, which you just did, I mean, how do you build that band into an image, a commodity, a product? How do you promote it? How do you actually do what you do? What are the steps involved?
Well, I think that, it's not like we work with boy bands, so we don't develop them, to the point where we're molding the band. We basically find bands that we can kind of provide the business tools for that already have, if somebody came and checked them out from a major label, would say, okay, look at this is a band worth signing, as long as there's a business infrastructure and support behind the band outside of them just being, 5 kids or what have you. So,
there's like the band Ellipsis. They actually that we managed. They had a short stint here at Loyola, and they wound up. When we first went and saw them, they played at the Hangar. And they were doing, some of their original music, but mainly it was like cover tunes and whatnot. And they had talent. They hadn't really been, given, all the tools necessarily, like the business A, B, and C's. So we sat them down and helped them form, the LLC. And to help them, start doing more and more shows outside of town to generate more revenue, get the new CD, get the poster made, get the flyers made, get the website up, and, eventually be able to finance, putting an album out, and just kind of like step by step, and then, buy the tour van, get the trailer, and just go. They just tour, and that's the way that, and then they come back home and they do their shows. And ultimately it's about the music. It's about what the guys or girls in the band write that's going to be attractive to a major label if that's the direction they want to go to. But from a major label standpoint, they have to show that they can, get on the road, play, not self-implode, and at the same time build a following outside just your city. Because, if you're only big in your hometown, then that's not really much in the overall scheme of things. So
got to start there, though. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
Well, so you book these tours, right?
Yes and no. Out of necessity, we'll do it at the beginning for our bands. That's, as the scrolling website in the back. We have questions already. This is fantastic. At first, yes, we will book our own bands. Ultimately, the goal is for us to do the PR for them at first, to book them, to manage them, and do the graphic design and whatnot to get them to the level where they're attractive to a national booking agency, for a national record label, and for a national print and radio publicist, so we can just move into the management section. But that's kind of the advantage of what our company provides, is that we can do all those different things until they can afford or get big enough for outside entities to do it. So
how do you get that tour going, though? Do you have your own network of clubs and venues that you work with?
It's more your...
Pretty much. Over the years, that's how it kind of starts if you're working with a band. Generally, you're going to have to, if it's a band and there's some local band and they haven't really gone anywhere and you want to work with them and you've got no experience, you're going to have to figure out a way to put them on the road, book their tours, get them tour press and all that kind of stuff. So just over the years, you develop the ability to take a band, what kind of clubs make sense, capacity-wise, stylistically, all that stuff, and you just basically phone call after phone call or email after email. You just try to get you're basically trying to get a band that has no draw, no pull into a club that's worth nothing, which we see that side of the equation too because we buy talent. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to book a band that can't bring anybody, and you're in essence trying to sell this to a talent buyer and say, book this band, we'll be able to bring some people. So you have to be able to back it up and say, look, it might have been a light draw, but they did an interview in this publication that we were able to get, and you saw posters all over town, which we oversaw with the street team. So you just got to you have to hit all those angles. So even if the show doesn't go well from the artist side, the talent buyer knows that you were trying to do it. And just years of doing this, you figure out the routes. You can go on Polestar and see anybody's tour dates, and if you see a band that's similar to yours and you see all the venues, that's a little bit of homework right there. You just find out the contact information and you start contacting thereafter. And once you've done it for a while, through networks of similar sized booking agents or whatnot, you can kind of ask questions and get help in different spots if you don't know the answer to a particular market where you want to put a band.
Had a question, you said? Yeah.
Yeah, back to when y'all were helping out with this. If it's not too much trouble, if this is too confidential,
Wow, sounds like a good question. Yeah, go ahead.
Money, how did they afford? Y'all gave them so much help, or was it y'all developing them? How do you charge?
Sure, most of it's a fair question. I'm going to have to be somewhat vague because it's business, But as far as for management companies, there's all kind of different situations. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that to be vague, but there really is. It's a separate thing. Ultimately, they were very smart with their business. They now have gotten to the point where they've saved up to have a recording studio. It's like you take your money and you all your merchandise that you sell and you keep it in what we call the kitty. I said it's a bank. You start a checking account, and everybody in the band knows what's going on with the finances and whatnot, and that's how they've gone from like one step to another to another. Sometimes, for instance, Scott and I's position isn't this, and not with any of the bands that we work with, but larger management companies, out of New York or LA, or somebody who just has a ton of money that doesn't know what to do with it. They'll pick a band up and they'll throw $50,000 or $100,000 behind them, and see what sticks. You know what I mean? So it can kind of come from all angles. As far as from Ellipsis' standpoint, that's everything that they have is pretty much theirs.
So they come to you and get your consulting help with money to give you, or did y'all go to them?
It was actually, it's kind of a funny way. There was a guy, we originally shared an office with a company called Renaissance Records, which is a couple of graduates from Loyola, Robert LeBlanc and Eric Delgado, and there's a guy named DJ Kinetic, Todd Graven, who actually was originally their manager. And we've all been good friends over the years and stuff. And once we moved out of the space, he kept saying, he's like, man, you got to pick up this band. You got to pick up this band. And, I went and checked them out at the hangar, and I saw that there was tons of kids there and stuff, watching them do their covers and stuff. But, I liked them. But like the next day, they came to our office, and then they came back to the office, and they were willing just to come in. Any local band, and I know this isn't like a complete open invitation, but we try to help out local bands. Like even if we don't pick them up, if they say we want to go play in Jackson, Mississippi, to Memphis and Jacksonville, Florida, can you give us some contact information of some of the venues to go play? I'll happily do that anytime to help somebody out, especially local bands. And that's what they were willing to do. They came in and they kept asking for phone numbers. They were trying to pound it away. And I mean, that's what, like Scott said, he was like, unless you see the potential down the road and the effort from the band, it's a futile process. I mean, I said, you're just going to sink a bunch of time and effort into something that's not going to work out. It looked like they had the dedication to do it, and I mean, I can't even tell you how glad I am that we did.
And they had the business savvy to do what most bands don't when they're starting off. I mean, when they play gigs, since it's not their sole, I mean, they don't spend all of their money as soon as they get paid off of a gig. They put it away and into a bank account, which a few bands have done, and those are the ones that can afford to go out and tour. The ones that don't, that's the reason that they never leave town, outside of some obvious factors. But they can't afford to go $2,000 in the hole because you don't make any money when you go on tour. Whereas if you save up your local money, you can go out on the road, and you're inevitably going to lose money if you go out for any length of time. And if you sock that money away, you can cover your tour, so you can get out there and build these different markets. And Ellipsis was a band that understood that from the get-go. And they were persistent, which, again, shows a lot right there, especially for a band that at the time was like 17 and 18,
Y'all cover all genres? Y'all help out all genres?
Yeah, I mean, Scott and I, it's kind of like a constant joke in the office as far as who listens to what in the office. I mean, I don't know. We between all of us and Sarah Cohen, who's one of our head publicists, and that's the best thing about when you're talking about the music business interns. I mean, there's so much music that comes into our office that now that I like that I never ever would have listened to before, just because I'm exposed to it. But as far as like where our hearts are, I mean, we manage. I don't want this to be like a huge commercial for all of our bands, but I mean, the Hazard County Girls, for instance. I mean, they're like, a cross between Sonic Youth and Black Sabbath. It's really heavy, and that's more like where my own personal tastes are. Ellipsis is what they are, and Macrosick is more of, if you're into Blonde Redhead and Radiohead and Talking Heads kind of music. So yeah, we span everything. I mean, we don't represent any hip hop or country artist. I mean, it's not because I have anything against it. It's just not really what I do. So.
For management, anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
we work with the genres
For
that we
PR.
know, but for publicity, I mean, we work with Preservation Hall Jazz Band. I mean, that's obviously not down the pipe mainstream by any stretch. But if we can get our hands around it, and publicity is a little bit easier because it's not so all-encompassing, I mean, we'll consider it for sure.
Thanks, that's it.
Excellent, good questions.
So, as a publicist, do you publicize other bands than your own?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, we'll do the publicity for bands that we manage until a point if a label gets involved, et cetera. But I mean, we'll straight on just take bands as publicity clients, like Charlie Hunter, or Preservation Hall Jazz Band, Jupiter Sunrise, which is like a more pop punk oriented band, and it's kind of on an as-per basis. Some of them we just do tour press for, meaning we'll get their tour schedule, get them articles in every market's version of Gambit and Times-Picayune, Offbeat, etc. And there's other ones, it's less frequent, but if it's a new release, it's usually more independent-oriented bands, so we'll work it to niche-oriented press.
How do you prepare a publicity campaign for a band? What's the first thing you do?
Find out exactly what they're looking for. If they've got a new record going out and they don't have any tour dates, well, you're going to aim it at national publications that don't rely on you being in New York or Boston or Phoenix or Tucson or wherever it might be. If it's just tour press, then you're going to get all the necessary tour information from the agent, manager, or the band, and basically start sending out the press releases, send out the press kits, and following up the press leading up to the show. Kind of, at least for what we do, it usually falls into one of those two realms. Either tour press or record release press.
Well, if you put on your other hat as talent buyer, Do you buy your own talent, or you're searching for anybody out there to fill the venue? How many venues do you buy talent for?
Sure. Well, I mean, we have 3 in Colorado, and we do Twiropa in New Orleans, which I guess is technically, 2 rooms. There's, a smaller venue and the larger venue. We definitely will book our own bands into our venue if it makes sense, and point in case, I said, a couple of shows coming up, we have with some of the bands that we manage, but by and large, most of it's national talent or local bands, I said, and it has no affiliation with us whatsoever. I mean, when you manage a band, and you book them into your own venue, it's not a conflict of interest, but it's kind of hard to wear both hats because you're after the venue's best interest and your band's best interest. But usually if it's fair, and that's the way that we try to negotiate anyway, even if we just manage a band. I mean, you don't want to if you manage a band, you don't want to go into a venue and say, give me a $2,000 guarantee, when you know that we're worth 10 people and they're going to lose a ton of money. I mean, you'll never work with them with that band or with anybody else. So I mean, it's all about kind of being fair. From the talent buying standpoint, I mean, quite frankly, it's an interesting balance between music that you like and music that's going to make money, and then sometimes you book stuff that you don't like at all, but it makes money for the venue, and other people around in the city like it, so you also provide it. So.
Do you find there's any advantages to be had from being a talent buyer and a manager?
Absolutely.
How does that work?
For our clients who are management clients or PR clients, they definitely have benefited, the fringe benefits of maybe us buying talent in different cities from, being able to help them out with shows and whatnot. But the main thing is that you really see both sides of the coin. I'd have to say that that's the biggest advantage. It's like when you're negotiating with an agent or with a manager, I said, as a talent buyer, you know what their hard expenses are, and whenever somebody's giving you a bunch of crap. As far as like, this band is worth this many people. No, you're not. And it's good. I mean, that knowledge is definitely helpful. So,
It definitely helps you with just doing the different things that we do. It gives you the experience to where when things do move on with a band to a larger plane, you might not know all the ins and outs of what the national print publicist is going to do or the record label is going to do, but because you've done it, at least in some aspect, you know what they should be doing. So from the management perspective, it gives you a better way to kind of keep an eye on what's going on and who should be doing what, because you actually have done that stuff before. And then the talent buying side, similar, it's the other side of the fence, but it's similar. You've worked with the artists, you know what they're looking for, they need to make money, you're the venue, you need to make money, and you can kind of see where to meet in between.
What's your relationship to the merchandising of your bands? Do you help them buy the stuff, manufacture the stuff? Do you take a percentage of that? How does that work?
Go merch guy.
We haven't really used it much for bands that we work with, and it's been it's been on a fairly simple level. It's been, a band needs T-shirts made. We can hook them up with the person that can get it done the cheapest. We can get them wholesale from somebody and just get them a better deal than they would if they just went to probably somebody in town or out of town. So we don't really do it for bands we work with so much. We've done it here and there for some bands around town, but the bands that we do work with, if it makes sense, we do. But a lot of them have been getting their merch from different buyers, or they have ins already where they can get cheap printing here or this or that. So it doesn't so much fall into that.
Well, if you sign a band to a contract, and I assume that everybody is under contract to some extent, is that right?
So more or less, the bands that we manage.
Well, if you manage and you book a band, do you take a double percentage?
You can't
No.
double dip. I said, yeah, that's like the stuff that you used to read about in the horror stories of the books. No, when we manage a band, if we are booking for them and stuff, it's more of like the team atmosphere. You're almost like another member of the band. With your percentage, you're just like another member of the band, and we're providing that service out of necessity. Again, that's obviously. There's two ways of looking at it. You could be short-sighted and say, well, hell, I don't want to get a booking agent, and I don't want to get a publicist and all that kind of stuff because I have to give up, more percentage of everything. But if you have a national booking agent and you have a national publicist, there's that much more money coming in. You're actually making more money. You just have to kind of see the forest for the trees, so to speak. But no, when our bands are on the grassroots level, we're definitely not doing that. We've had bands that we manage that have been booked by smaller boutique agencies all the way up to like the agency group out of New York, and it's great when you get a national booking agent for your band because they're on the road, everything's nice and organized, and the booking side is probably the most difficult thing that you can do for a band. If anybody's in bands, which I'm assuming a lot of you are, you probably know that having to deal with people to get gigs is pretty much the biggest nightmare that there is. So.
It's probably easier to find a booking or a record label rather than a booking agency. Granted, it would be
A good one.
smaller tier, but it's probably a little bit easier.
Do you interact with lawyers? Do your bands have lawyers, or do you provide some services in that respect with them? I mean, not legal services, but take care of contracts and venue performance deals and sometimes record deals maybe?
When it comes to this, venue contracts for bands, that's stuff that Casey and I can both take. I mean, we can look over that stuff. We don't need an attorney to look at it. But with one band in particular, where they're in the stages of dealing with a larger label, they have an attorney that's taking care of the legal side of that. I mean, we know some ins and outs, but when it gets to be something on that tier, you have to have an attorney.
What's the last band you actually took to a national level and they got national publicity and a national PR firm and a record company and all that?
I guess it was the 40s,
Yeah.
Morning 40 Federation.
Are they doing okay?
They're doing okay right now. I mean, they basically went from having nothing several years. Basically, we did everything, and then they got picked up by the agency group. They got a label. The label hired somebody to do national print. The label hired somebody to work college radio. Online marketing company was hired to do certain things. So, I mean, that's kind of one of those A to Z. Start developing a band, get them to that point. That's the goal of managing with a band, to have it, not necessarily to however that materialized or turned out, but to take a band with nothing, do all the stuff for them, and get them to the point where they have the team or whatever you want to call it in place that works the band and the record, and whatever success comes out of it comes out of it. But you need to have that kind of structure around them, because there's no such thing as just a band doing it on their own and selling records. I mean, there's examples of bands like Death Cab or Modest Mouse who've sold a lot of records on an independent label, but there were still people doing publicity for the record and doing the booking for the band and doing college radio and all the things that go along with it. So,
Are you going to start a record company?
no.
Absolutely not. No way.
Doesn't
No,
interest you?
no.
I'd take that money to Harrah's
Yeah,
and have probably a better chance of a turnover.
yeah, pretty much. Sorry, Melissa.
Well, what is it? Obviously you're entrepreneurs. How did you finance your companies in the beginning, and how do you go about living that life? I mean, you've got payroll, and you've got rent, and you've got expenses. I mean,
It's I'm not gonna.
I think we just didn't think about it a whole lot, which is the reason that we wound up doing it. I mean, we both knew that we were working for ourselves, and we knew that we wanted to do it. We didn't look at it and have a master business plan in perspective or on the table. We just said, okay, we're doing this on our own. Let's just put it together. We'll find a way to, we'll work on the side the first year or so just to generate money so we can sink all of our money into it and just kind of go about it that way. But in retrospect, we probably should have said, okay, let's start this. Let's make sure we have 6 to 12 months in reserves in case, inevitably, if you're working with bands, you're not going to get paid on time. You will get paid, but make sure that if things get backed up a month or two, you can still, take your draw, whatever you're taking out each month. Initially, when we started it, we weren't thinking it that way because we were thinking publicity clients, that'll be our revenue stream, and we'll be doing whatever we're doing. But it all fell into one so quickly that we just really didn't think that far ahead because we didn't know that's the direction the company was going to wind up in within 6 months of its starting up.
how do you find doing business in New Orleans? I mean, is it any advantages or handicaps?
I'll
We,
fill that one.
we probably wouldn't be talent buyers in a 1,500 capacity venue within a couple years of starting to do talent buying if we're in Manhattan or Los Angeles or Chicago or a ultra major market. It's cheap to live down here, but again, there's no music business, so to speak, comparatively speaking, to major markets. Well, New York and LA, it doesn't really exist down here. So you're still going to have to find people from outside of the city to do certain things. Not everything, and if you can get somebody in town to do it, you do it if they can handle it responsibly and take care of it. But there's only so many companies down here that actually do some of the different things: publicity, booking, etc., record labels. So you oftentimes have to go out of town as it is. So proximity makes things a lot easier as far as networking and whatnot. If you're in New York, you're probably going to be doing a lot more business with people who live in Manhattan just because you're running into them all the time. If you're down here, we're fortunate that we have Jazz Fest, because if we didn't, we really wouldn't have any influx of industry types in town, because Mardi Gras doesn't bring it in, and the tourism industry brings all the other people, basically. So that's kind of the one ringer that the city does have as far as making it look viable to outside companies and outside industry people.
So do you think that the city does provide opportunities for some of the students, the graduates, to stick around and run businesses here, start businesses?
It does, but judging from the size of this, I'd say not everybody's going to be able to stay in town if they're going to work in music once they get out, unless they all start a company.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing about the city is, I don't know, it's the double-edged sword. I mean, it's a fun place. There's a lot of amazing musicians here. I mean, you know, all the bands that we manage are from here. Especially like in the rock scene, there's a really great, like, it's not even underground. I mean, it's with Worldly or Pretend getting signed and a couple of other bands being looked at and whatnot. You know, it's a great place to be a musician, I think. As far as like being in the music business itself, it's somewhat limited. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, you know, I don't think that if you want to have a company, if you want to start a music company, I don't think you have to live in New York and LA. You know, some people would argue against me, and that's fine. I mean, there's a lot of companies that I know that operate out of the middle of Kansas or North Carolina, and, you know, boutique, it all depends on what you want out of your life. If you want to go work for Clear Channel and, you know, you really want that corporate drive, then move to New York and do it, you know, or move to Houston and do it, or LA. But if you're looking to work on, you know, with a company that's 4 to 10 employees, you know, 4 and 10 employees, it's almost like more of a family. It's really much more about the music and stuff. It can really exist almost anywhere. Laptops and cell phones, you know, and we're hoping our company gets to the point where, you know, we can be based out of wherever, but we can fly and go to New York and LA as much as we need to for our clients, you know, that need it. So I would have to say it's been a tremendous advantage for the last 4 years because, quite frankly, the cost of living is so low down here. It's been very cost effective for us, you know, and I think it's been a blessing, you know. So
Do you travel a lot?
we do. I mean, I say it goes in spurts. You know, it depends. I mean, we sometimes go to the music conferences. You know, Sarah Cohen just went to South by Southwest for us. You know, when our bands have showcases for labels in New York or, you know, in LA or wherever that we need to go, you know, we'll travel. If I had my choice, I would travel, you know, once or twice a month. Yeah, sure. You know, preferably in Europe somewhere. You know, I said if I could start doing business in Europe, it would be fantastic. You know.
Are you booking your bands in Europe?
No, but if you have anybody in mind, I'm definitely open to it. You know, I know my bands would like it, so especially certain parts, I'm sure they would prefer over others. So,
Do you have any long-term plans for expansion or changing your business in any way?
I think just basically doing what we do right now, just in a broader capacity. You know, more publicity clients, large, you know, higher profile, larger bands, more bands on major labels or important independent labels. Basically, what we're doing right now is the framework for us, what I think we want our company to do: talent buying for more venues. So I think everything that we do right now is what we want the company to be. It's just in a higher profile, higher clients, hopefully our own clients raised to a higher profile along the way. But I think what we do right now is pretty much as we want it to be. We just want it to continue to grow as far as what we do and who we work with.
Do you market your services? Do you try to get new clients, or do they come to you? How does that work?
it's more about word of mouth. I mean, we really don't take out advertising. Like I know Scott alluded to it, and probably almost all of you in the room know about Polestar, and kind of like an industry standard. It's not like we're taking out a full page color spread and Polestar saying, we manage people. For our PR services, Scott actually just brought it up today, was, maybe start running some banner ads on, Jambase, or, just maybe some, music industry sites, just letting them know about our PR services. But for the most part, your work kind of speaks for yourself in the music industry. It's a lot smaller than you might anticipate as well. I mean, if you do good work and you're ethical, it goes a long way. And it's most of our clients come from referrals from other people. So.
Well, if there was somebody in here that wanted to start a management company or a booking company or a PR company, what advice would you offer?
I would definitely recommend do a business plan first. Even though Scott said if you think about it too hard, you probably wouldn't wind up doing it. Yeah. Definitely have a good contracts department for sure. If you're going to do it, just be willing to work an insane amount of hours. I mean, I don't say it to get any whining points or anything. I mean, we definitely. I don't know if we do it every week now, but we definitely pretty consistently put in 60 to 70 hours a week, sometimes more. I mean, plus go to shows and everything. If you don't love it, it sounds very cliche, but seriously, if you don't love it, definitely don't do it. Save yourself time and energy and go into a real profession where you can make a lot of money right off the bat. It takes a while, and I mean, if your heart's into it, I think that's probably the best thing that I can recommend.
And just be cognizant of the different fields in the industry that make a percentage of what an artist makes versus maybe a fee. You do press for bands. Usually that's going to be some kind of flat rate or staggered rate predicated upon how busy they are. If you're managing a band, typically you're going to make a percentage. If you're booking, you're going to make a percentage. So just be aware that, you can, if you haven't really done it yet, you can say, well, if I'm going to do this many bands, I'll be making this percentage, and they'll be making this amount of money. But when you get down to it, if you're starting with developing bands, they're not making a lot of money. So a small percentage of that is really not a lot of money. So you're probably going to have to be doing multiple jobs just to facilitate being able to start your own company. And that kind of goes without saying, but unless you have a business loan or you've got enough money to back you up to float you for a couple of years, that's probably going to be the case.
I'd recommend learning how to bartend as well. It helps. Waiting tables, bartending, being willing. Until, I guess, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I was still having to bartend, Yeah, absolutely. So.
Do you ever take a piece of the back end rather than money? Do you take a percentage of a deal that may happen in the future rather than take a monthly fee from an artist that you're publicizing?
For the most part, bands that we get that we make, X amount of dollars per month are publicity clients. So it doesn't necessarily behoove us. There's really no back end to see from them. Simply because of what we're attached to. We're getting paid a specific fee to do X, Y, and Z for the band. The management side is basically where you're doing that. You're hoping to make money off of them as opposed to maybe less on the front, because if you're developing, again, the band's just not making much money, relatively speaking.
Yeah, if the band makes $100 at a gig, you're 10%. Enjoy your McDonald's or your Kumpai, sushi buffet. That's as far as I think what you're asking is more like if a producer does an album and whatnot, you take your producer points and stuff, and that way if it pops, you make it, and stuff. Preferably if you can make your money on the front end, it's always a nice thing, So.
What's a typical day? Do you have meetings every day about your clients, or are you just kind of rushing through the day and things happen to you, or how does it work?
I think it just kind of depends on what's going on with the particular artist or venue. Right now, for example, it's Jazz Fest. Casey and I are trying to make sure that with Twiropa, all the final details are taken care of and just get us. It's a pretty intense time period because you're talking about a 1,500 capacity venue and a 600 capacity venue with multiple shows going on early, late, etc. So that takes up a lot of our time. At the same time, we've got artists that are playing either at the fairgrounds and playing other shows during that time frame that you're trying to push and promote. We've got bands that are on the road that we do publicity for. Some are going to be in town during that time frame. So you're just trying to juggle all of it. And it's not that you go through it haphazardly, but you just kind of have to see what's coming down the pipe that's going to take the most of your time during that time frame. After we get through Fest, we'll be focusing more on one particular band who's going to be out in Los Angeles doing another showcase for a label. But through all of that, we still have to book shows at Twiropa. There's still the shows at the venues in Colorado. Other bands are still having to go on tour. All the bands that we do publicity for are touring. So you're kind of always doing all of it. It's just what takes the most time. And right now, Jazz Fest is upon us, so that's definitely what's taking up the bulk of our time.
Both of you are married, right?
Yes.
Yes.
How do you balance your personal life with your business life if you're working 80 hours a week?
Very patient wives, I said, I can speak personally for mine. So, yeah, we work, again, that's kind of the beauty of the laptops, you just kind of juggle it, and you go home, and when everybody goes to sleep, you just keep working. People in our business keep pretty weird hours. Especially for instance, the West Coast people. They don't even get into the office. We'll get into the office sometime between 8 and 9 in the morning and leave the office at 6, 8 o'clock at night. Go home, hang out, have dinner, and relax and stuff, and get back on the computer at 10:30 or 11. Well, there's still people who are working. Especially bands and stuff. And as far as our work week goes, there is a lot of boring side to what we do. We sit in production meetings at Twiropa and marketing meetings, and we have weekly band meetings with our bands and stuff, and some of those are budget meetings and stuff. So not that anybody here thinks it's all glitz and glamour, by any means, but there's a lot of incredibly amazing parts of our job, but there is a little bit more of the tedious kind of stuff. Phone calls, good Lord, just so many phone calls and emails, So.
Does somebody take care? Do y'all divide up the responsibilities? Or is somebody in charge of the finances? How do you manage the financial end of your business?
It's fun. I don't know. I said when there's making a lot of money, it's fun. When you're not, it's a little bit more stressful. Yeah, I mean, we do kind of divide up. Originally, in our company, we just, as everything would come, we would just kind of like, divvy it up and do it as it came on. I mean, Scott and I don't do one thing with the PR side of our company. I mean, that's pretty much Scott and Sarah and, our various people from the great Loyola music program that help out, send a lot of faxes out for sure. And then from the talent buying standpoint, Scott has certain agents that he deals with. I deal more with the local bands and certain other national agents. As far as the bands we manage, we both kind of are point people in different ones. So we both can pretty much do everything interchangeably in our company at any one time. But we just, I don't know, there's not really like a definite lines and structure. I mean, now it's, especially with the bands that we have, the ones that we manage are kind of getting to the level that they're getting to. Scott has definitely a different skill set that I do, and vice versa. And so, we both work on those bands together, along with Sarah is like, from the PR standpoint. So every client gets like all of our skills as opposed to just like limited to just one person. But one of us is usually the point person who gets the crazy phone calls at 2:30 or 3 in the morning when something doesn't go right, So.
That's definitely the case, but it also helps because there wouldn't have been a whole lot of point in Casey and I starting to work together if we weren't going to work on the larger stuff together, because otherwise I could have done what I was doing, he could have done what he was doing, and there wouldn't have needed to be any overlap on decision making. But like Casey said, certain things I deal with, he'll deal with, but on the whole, all the major things that we do, we pretty much do together, larger decisions, et cetera, just because it helps, at least in my case, make a better educated decision to have a second opinion on it. And likewise, there's certain things that are time-consuming, tedious, that you don't need to say, Casey, what do you think about this? Or vice versa. But on the larger stuff, it's that two brains are better than one theory. Or maybe worse, but hopefully better.
What do you look for in an employee? If you're going to hire somebody, what kind of person do you want?
Casey?
We have a very, I guess, non-traditional work environment, for the most part. It's fairly relaxed, and we're definitely looking for people who are pretty like passionate about music. I mean, I guess that's what I have to say. As far as that just goes without saying. Somebody who can kind of tolerate us, as well. I mean, seriously, it's when you work with bosses in that kind of situation, it's not like you're. I don't know, you can run away from us. We're all on top of each other, so we all have to get along pretty well. Just absolutely, we'll not take no for an answer. That's the kind of people, and a current employee actually summed it up pretty much best. It's like, if I give you something to do, if you don't know how to do it, say you do and figure it out. I mean, that's pretty much the kind of people I'm looking for. Well-rounded Renaissance people. Like somebody who can do a little bit of everything. And again, working a lot more hours than sometimes you get paid for.
I mean,
So that's just
they're
sucks, but that's true.
because of time constraints and how busy Casey and I are. They're going to have to be able to kind of pick up what needs to get done pretty quickly, at least without a lot of going back and saying, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. And that's why Sarah's been awesome, because she's basically come in and been able to handle tour press for, large clients like Charlie Hunter or Preservation Hall, where I can work with her on stuff, but I know if she's running with something, I don't have to worry about it getting done or not getting done. Accountability and being able to pick up things pretty quickly is definitely one. And then just going through the same things that Casey and I went through. I put up posters for House of Blues, and I interned at Tips and worked security shifts at Tips. All the stuff that's not very fun to do, but you have to do it kind of on the way up, and you don't make much money doing any of it. And it's not that you necessarily need to do it for us, it's just that you have to realize that if you're going to get involved in music, I don't care if you're working for William Morris or a local company, you're not going to get paid a lot of money, and you're going to have to do a lot more than you think that you probably should have coming out of college or out of a good school with a good degree. It's just part of the industry.
Let's see if anybody has any questions.
It's so weird to talk.
Anybody have any
about
questions
this
of
much,
these
right?
gentlemen?
That one of the things that we look at is I keep an eye on people's calendars, and I go see local band shows around town. Probably not every single night as I once used to, but if you're doing a local show and you have anywhere from 500 to 800 people at your show, has a tendency to catch my attention. I said, because that means that you've done something right of building, not like your first show, I'm just saying consistently you're doing it. There's certain bands that, I just notice around town that they're like, every time you go into the bathroom at any bar or any music venue, their sticker is on the wall, or you see their flyers on every single telephone pole every time they have a show. You always see, you hear people talking about them in our office. I mean, we always have younger college people and stuff like that in our office always rapping about them. So that's kind of like the first criteria. As far as if we're not going to pick somebody up, like Scott said, I would get on Polestar.com and start finding bands that are kind of smaller, that look at the venues that they're playing, hunt their information down, get on everything from MySpace to, Friendster, all those different ways, get out there and trade your music, get on Pure Volume. And I don't know, Scott, from a PR standpoint, what else would you do?
Just shameless self-promotion. In your own city, you try to build a following and a crowd in your own hometown, because if you can't do it there, you're not going to probably be doing it in other cities. Unless you live in Bunkie, obviously you're probably not going to be able to build a super big following. But if you live in a town that's of reasonable size or has a college element, etc., build that market and then just use that model and transpose it to other cities. Start going off and doing weekend dates. If you're in school, or to save money. Don't go out on the road and for a month where you're going to lose a ton of money. Go out and play Jackson and play Austin and play Dallas, in reasonable markets that make sense, and just try to duplicate what you're doing in your own hometown. But as far as the other thing is, for us to work with a band, if it's somebody local, persistence. If they're showing enough persistence where they're, not to the point where it's over the top, just aggravating, but they're sure of themselves, but not too sure of themselves. That's definitely a big plus too. That was how the Ellipsis kids were. Ellipsis guys, rather.
Guys, men, yes.
So they need a demo or a record or a CD for sure, right?
Absolutely. I'm sure through workshops and just being in the program, everybody knows if you're in a band, you need to have some kind of demo. You need to have like the press kit, basic thing, like a picture of your band, the one sheet, rundown, the history of your band, which is always fairly interesting to read new ones. I said, they're great though, definitely have those. Get stickers, I said, and just have all the basic press kit, because that's what you're going to have to mail off to all the different venues and stuff to get a show anyway. As far as locally goes, if a local band wants to play at Twiropa, for instance, if your band can only bring 15 to 20 people, I wouldn't necessarily recommend playing a place that has a 600 capacity, even with the smaller one. The smaller room, I would recommend playing the smaller rooms for a while, and don't burn yourself out. I've heard other people say it, and it sounds like an old guy sitting here preaching, man, but just don't play 5-6 times every single month for the next year. Play a lot, get the buzz going and stuff, but start spacing your plays out, because eventually your friends are going to get sick of coming and see your band. And so, you just need to, kind of space your plays out a little bit, make them really big, and find other bands that in town that can pull really well, and, put them on the bill with you and split the money and be cool and be fair about it. So,
Casey, Scott, thanks very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
How did y'all start booking shows for Twiropa?
I'm sorry, but I couldn't hear you.
How did y'all start booking shows for Twiropa?
How did we start booking shows for Twiropa?
We
have to give that answer.
A few years ago, when we first started the company, the opportunity came to book the Hi-Ho Lounge. And at that time, Casey was still booking in Colorado, but we didn't have anything in town that we were the talent buyers for. And anybody that's been there know, in the best way, it's a dive. We even said that when we were booking it. And basically,
I love the Hi-Ho.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love that place, man.
And not the
that's my
safest
cage,
place,
by the way. In case anybody wants to know, that cage in the Hi-Ho, that's mine.
And it definitely, it just went from,
I want it back too.
It went from doing the Hi-Ho to getting offered the Blue Nile and then the Wolf, and just a larger club to a larger club to a larger club, and we just kept getting offers, so we just kept on. When you have the opportunity to book a venue, Twiropa, for example, the capacity's it's huge. So if it's a larger capacity with a greater ability to book larger, more frequent national acts, it's worth taking up. That's basically what happened. They were looking to get us for about a year before we took the job, and then they finally made us an offer that we were willing to take. So that's kind of how it happened.
So what's your strategy when you're looking at a venue like that? Like, what kind of, do you think of certain types of bands to program it, or do you kind of just take what you can get?
No, I mean, Troy Ropa, and again, not to harp too much on our specific clients, but, wow. I mean, that situation was really interesting. I mean, we basically walked into almost a blank slate. It was huge, and they had done a lot of private events. They had done a couple of really big shows that outside promoters had come into. And, when we were at the Howlin' Wolf, which was, a fantastic opportunity for a couple of years, especially the amount that we could book local bands and help them kind of build, especially in the rock scene there. Actually, they did most of the work. We just booked them. But as far as at Troy Ropa, for the first couple of months, the main emphasis was getting the infrastructure in place, of like getting all the different components, like what we talked about with when we pick up a new band, there's all the different parts that had to be in place. Well, we kind of did the same thing with Troy Ropa, and they already had some really, really skilled and very knowledgeable people in place. It was just, they were very open to our vision as far as like what our ideas were combined with what they saw. And they're younger owners, comparatively speaking, in this business. So it was just kind of like a bunch of younger people getting together and kind of feeling it out. And from October to like February, quite frankly, man, we booked almost everything under the sun and just like threw it on the wall and saw what stuck, and now the place is kind of starting to emerge with a certain kind of vibe, man. The market kind of dictates what kind of music you're going to book. There's certain crowds that seem to really like to go to the venue, and there's still a lot of renovations to that back room that are going to be done that are going to kind of improve it and just to make it more of like the music hall that everybody foresees. But right now the indie rock stuff seems to be doing very well there, like the Interpols and whatnot, and the DJ oriented stuff. I am bound and determined that metal will do well there. I don't care how many shows I have to keep booking to lose money doing it. But and I said, it's that, anything that's in the rock genre, I'd really like it to be kind of. I'm sure if you look at the Troy Ropa calendar, you realize that there's not a lot of necessarily like Papa Grows Funk kind of music there and stuff like that. It's not because we don't listen to it, and it's not because we don't appreciate it. It's just like if you want to see Papa Grows Funk play, you want to go to the Maple Leaf and see it, or if you want to see the Radiators play, you want to go to Tipitina's to see it, and so on and so on. So it's like we're kind of like looking to establish our own little identity, but ultimately for that back room, I'd like it to be almost every kind of genre under the face, that there is, So look, House of Blues calendar. I think House of Blues does a pretty good job, man, of bringing all the different kind of genres of music, man. And I'm not saying that we're emulating them at all, man, but I think that you can have a metal show one night, a country night show the next night, and a really quiet indie rock show the next night. So. I'm sorry?
Was the venue getting involved very much? Like, was there a standard you guys had? Even with the hi-hat, was there like some kind of standard you guys had?
With the hi-hat, was any band that was willing to play the venue?
Jesus, I would call our friends and beg them, at first to play there. Their inputs, ultimately, man, when it's the venue, we're not promoters, we're talent buyers, so it's not our money. We are very open to our clients' suggestions because it's their funds, so it's like, yes, they very much have, input. I will have to say this, the guys at Troy Ropa have been unbelievably, they have shown a great deal of faith in us and very rarely have ever stepped into the middle of what we've done. We've pretty much had carte blanche, and they've definitely given their input and stuff like that. And on shows that haven't gone quite so well and stuff, they've still been very cool about it. They understand the whole building process, and but yeah, no, they've been great. But no, it's there's the principal owner especially. He's very business savvy, especially on the marketing standpoint. So he's very much involved. So yeah.
There are a number of independent bands or in this room.
Mm-hmm.
If they wanted to get you interested in them, what would they do? And in the alternative, what can they do for themselves if they don't get you interested and they still need to get themselves booked and get themselves publicized and that kind of thing?
As far as like get us interested in managing them, so to speak?
Yeah.
Sure. I would have to say that one of the things that we look at is I keep an eye on people's calendars, and I go see local band shows around town, probably not every single night as I once used to. But, if you're doing a local show and you have anywhere from 500 to 800 people at your show, has a tendency to catch my attention. I said, because that means that you've done something right of building, not like your first show, I'm just saying consistently you're doing it. There's certain bands that, I just notice around town that they're like every time you go into the bathroom at any bar or any music venue, their sticker is on the wall, or you see their flyers on every single telephone pole every time they have a show. You always see, you hear people talking about them in our office. I mean, we always have like, younger college people and stuff like that in our office always rapping about them. So that's kind of like the first criteria. As far as if we're not going to pick somebody up, like Scott said, I would get on Polestar.com and start finding bands that are kind of smaller, that look at the venues that they're playing, hunt their information down, get on everything from MySpace to, Friendster, all those different ways, get out there and trade your music, get on Pure Volume. And I don't know, Scott, from a PR standpoint, what else would you do?
Just shameless self-promotion. In your own city, you try to build a following and a crowd in your own hometown, because if you can't do it there, you're not going to probably be doing it in other cities. Unless you live in Bunkie, obviously you're probably not going to be able to build a super big following. But if you live in a town that's of reasonable size or has a college element, etc., build that market and then just use that model and transpose it to other cities. Start going off and doing weekend dates. If you're in school, or to save money. Don't go out on the road and for a month where you're going to lose a ton of money. Go out and play Jackson and play Austin and play Dallas, in reasonable markets that make sense, and just try to duplicate what you're doing in your own hometown. But as far as the other thing is, for us to work with a band, if it's somebody local, persistence. If they're showing enough persistence where they're, not to the point where it's over the top, just aggravating, but they're sure of themselves, but not too sure of themselves. That's definitely a big plus too. That was how the Ellipsis kids were. Ellipsis guys, rather.
Guys, men, yes.
So they need a demo or a record or a CD, for sure, right?
Absolutely. I'm sure through workshops and just being in the program, everybody knows if you're in a band, you need to have some kind of demo. You need to have like the press kit, basic thing, like a picture of your band, the one sheet, like rundown, like, the history of your band, which is always fairly interesting to read new ones. I said they're great though. Definitely have those. Get stickers. I said, and just have all like the basic press kit, because that's what you're going to have to mail off to all the different venues and stuff to get a show anyway. As far as locally goes, if a local band wants to play at Twiropa, for instance, if your band can only bring 15 to 20 people, I wouldn't necessarily recommend playing a place that has a 600 capacity, even with the smaller one. The smaller room, I would recommend playing the smaller rooms for a while, and don't burn yourself out. I've heard other people say it, and it sounds like an old guy sitting here preaching, man. But just don't play 5-6 times every single month for like the next year. Play a lot, get the buzz going and stuff, but start spacing your plays out. Because eventually your friends are going to get sick of coming and see your band. And so, you just need to, kind of space your plays out a little bit, make them really big, and find other bands that in town that can pull really well, and, put them on the bill with you and split the money and be cool and be fair about it. So,
Casey, Scott, thanks very much for being here.